The end of the Cold War. It matters because, after 40 years of the Cold War, the new division of Europe between the West and the East seemed to be permanent. Then a revolutionary upheaval in the Soviet Union and Eastern Europe brought an end to the Cold War and to this division. Gorbachev and Perestroika. By 1980, the Soviet Union was ailing. It had a declining economy, a rise in infant mortality rates, a dramatic surge in alcoholism, and poor working conditions. Within the Communist Party, a small group of reformers emerged. One was Mikhail Gorbachev. When the party chose him as leader in March 1985, a new era began. From the start, Gorbachev preached the need for radical reforms based on perestroika, or restructuring. At first, this meant restructuring economic policy. Gorbachev envisioned a market economy more responsive to consumers. It was to have limited free enterprise so that some businesses would be privately owned and operated. He realized, however, that reforming the economy would not work without political reform. He hoped to achieve this through glasnost, or openness, a policy that encouraged Soviet citizens and officials to discuss openly the strengths and weaknesses of the Soviet Union. At the 1988 Communist Party Conference, Gorbachev set up a new Soviet parliament of elected members, the Congress of People's Deputies. It met in 1989. He then created a new state presidency. Under the old system, the first secretary of the Communist Party, Gorbachev's position, had been the most important in the Soviet Union. In March 1990, Gorbachev became the Soviet Union's first and last president. Mikhail Gorbachev's accession to power in 1985 also eventually brought a dramatic end to the Cold War. His willingness to rethink Soviet foreign policy led to stunning changes. Gorbachev made an agreement in 1987, the Intermediate Range INF Treaty, to eliminate intermediate-range nuclear weapons. Both Gorbachev and US President Ronald Reagan wanted to slow down the arms race. They sought to reduce their military budgets to solve domestic problems. Gorbachev hoped to focus national resources on social and economic change. The United States wanted to cut its national debt, which had tripled during the Reagan presidency. Gorbachev also stopped giving Soviet military support to communist governments in Eastern Europe. This opened the door to the overthrow of communist regimes. A mostly peaceful revolutionary movement swept through Eastern Europe in 1989. The reunification of Germany on October 3, 1990, was a powerful symbol to the end of the Cold War. In 1991, the Soviet Union itself was dissolved. The long rivalry between the two superpowers was over. Revolutions in Eastern Europe. When Gorbachev decided the Soviets would no longer send troops to support the governments of the satellite countries, revolutions broke out throughout Eastern Europe. A look at 3 Eastern European states shows how the process worked. Workers' protests led to demand for change in Poland. In 1980, a worker named Lech Walesa organized a powerful national trade union known as Solidarity. Solidarity also gained the support of the Roman Catholic Church and its leaders. Pope John Paul II, the first Polish pope, even when Walesa was arrested, the movement continued. Finally, in 1988, the Polish regime agreed to free parliamentary elections, the first free elections in Eastern Europe in 40 years. A new government was elected, ending 45 years of communist rule. In December 1990, Walesa was chosen as president. Poland's new path, however, was not easy. Rapid free market reforms led to severe unemployment. Aleksander Kwasniewski, who succeeded Walesa, continued Poland's move toward an increasingly prosperous free market economy and democracy. Recent presidents have emphasized the need to combine modernization with tradition. Soviets crushed and then repressed the Czechoslovakian reform movement in 1968. Writers and other intellectuals continued to oppose the government, but they at first had little success. Then in 1988 and 1989, mass demonstrations took place throughout Czechoslovakia. By November 1989, the independence movement was generating crowds as large as 500,000 in Prague. In December 1989, the communist government collapsed. At the end of that month, Václav Havel, a writer who had played an important role in bringing down the communist government, became the new president. Havel was an eloquent spokesperson for Czech democracy and a new order in Europe. The new government soon faced all ethnic conflicts. The Czechs and Slovaks agreed to a peaceful division of Czechoslovakia, which split into Czech Republic and Slovakia. Havel became the first president of the Czech Republic, and Mikhail Kovács became the first president of Slovakia. Under its second president, Václav Klaus, the Czech Republic has one of the most stable and prosperous economies of the post-communist Eastern European states. Slovakia managed to make the transition from a centrally planned economy to a market economy. Communist leader Nicolae Ceausescu ruled Romania with an iron grip, using secret police to crush all dissent. Nonetheless, opposition grew. His economic policies led to a sharp drop in living standards. Food shortages caused rationing. In December 1989, the secret police murdered thousands of people who were peacefully demonstrating. Finally, the army refused to support any more repression. Ceausescu and his wife were captured and executed. A new government was quickly formed. Former communists dominated the government until 1996. 25 years after the end of communist rule, Romanians elected center-right candidate Klaus Iohannis to succeed Traian Băsescu, who was limited from serving another term. The end of the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union was made of 15 separate republics that included 92 ethnic groups and 112 different languages. As Gorbachev released the iron grip of the Communist Party, centering Moscow, all ethnic tensions came to the fore. Nationalist movements began. In 1989 and 1990, calls for independence came first in Soviet Georgia and then in Baltic states, Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia, Moldova, Uzbekistan, and Azerbaijan. The conservative leaders of the traditional Soviet institution, the army, government, KGB, and military industries were worried that the breakup of the Soviet Union would end their privileges. On August 19, 1991, a group of these conservative leaders arrested Gorbachev and tried to seize power. The attempt failed. However, when Boris Yeltsin, president of the Russian Republic, and thousands of Russians bravely resisted the rebel forces in Moscow, the Soviet republics now moved for complete independence. Ukraine voted for independence on December 1, 1991. A week later, the leaders of Russia, Ukraine, and Belarus announced that the Soviet Union has ceased to exist. The new Russia. Gorbachev resigned on December 25, 1991. He turned over his responsibilities as commander-in-chief to Boris Yeltsin, the new president of Russia. By the end of 1991, one of the largest empires in the world history had ended. Boris Yeltsin was committed to introducing a free market economy as quickly as possible, but the transition was not easy. Economic hardships and social disarray were made worse by a dramatic rise in organized crime. Another problem Yeltsin faced was in Chechnya, a province in the south that wanted to secede from Russia and become independent. Yeltsin used brutal force against the Chechens to keep the province as part of Russia. Yeltsin did not solve this problem, as fighting continued into the year 2000 under his successor. At the end of 1999, Yeltsin resigned and was replaced by Vladimir Putin, who was elected president in 2000. Putin, a former KGB officer, was widely seen as someone who wanted to keep a tight rein on government power. In July 2001, Putin launched reforms to boost growth and budget revenues. The reforms included the free sale and purchase of land and tax cuts. In spite of these changes, the business climate remained uncertain, which stifled foreign investment. Since Putin's reforms, Russia has experienced a budget surplus and a growing economy. Russia can attribute much of its economic growth to its oil and gas exports. The country has an estimated 6% of the world's oil deposits and about 30% of the world's natural gas deposits. In 2008, Dmitry Medvedev became president of Russia. Putin could not run for re-election because of limits in Russia's constitution, but he became prime minister. However, since Russia's constitution limits only consecutive terms, Putin won the presidency again in 2012 and will be eligible to run for re-election in 2018. Putin's latest term as president had been witness to controversies that have strained Russia's relationship with much of the world. Russian military interventions in both the Ukrainian Revolution of 2014 and the Syrian Civil War of 2015 have been causes of alarm. Russia also faces internal challenges. A drop in the price of crude oil has impacted the Russian economy. Rising alcoholism, criminal activities, and the decline of the traditional family system continue to give Russians concern. The disintegration of Yugoslavia. Yugoslavia had a communist government but was never a Soviet satellite state. After World War II, its dictatorial leader, Josip Broz Tito, worked to keep together the 6 republics and 2 provinces that made up Yugoslavia. By 1990, however, the Communist Party collapsed. The Yugoslav political scene was complex. Slobodan Milosevic, leader of Serbia, rejected the efforts toward independence. In Milosevic's view, the borders of the republic first needed to be redrawn to form a new Greater Serbian state. When negotiations failed, Slovenia and Croatia declared their independence in June 1991. In September 1991, the Yugoslav army attacked Croatia. Increasingly, Serbia dominated the Yugoslav army. Serbian forces captured 1/3 of Croatia's territory before the conflict ended. The Serbs next attacked Bosnia-Herzegovina and acquired 70% of Bosnian territory. Many Bosnians were Muslims. The Serbs followed a policy called ethnic cleansing towards Bosnians, killing or forcibly removing them from their lands. Ethnic cleansing revived memories of Nazi atrocities in World War II. In 1995, with the support from NATO air attacks, Bosnian and Croatian forces regained considerable territory lost to Serbian forces. The Serbs signed a formal peace treaty that split Bosnia into a Serb republic and a Muslim Croat federation. A new war erupted in 1998 over Kosovo, an autonomous or self-governing province within Yugoslavia. After Slobodan Milosevic stripped Kosovo of its autonomy in 1989, a group of ethnic Albanians founded the Kosovo Liberation Army and began a campaign against Serbian rule. To crush the KLA, Serb forces massacred ethnic Albanians. The United States and NATO allies worked on a settlement that would end the killing. The Albanians in Kosovo regained their autonomy in 1999. Milosevic's rule ended in 2000. While on trial for his role on the massacre of Kosovo civilians, Milosevic died in 2006. The last political vestiges of Yugoslavia ceased to exist in 2004 when the government officially renamed the countries Serbia and Montenegro. The people of Montenegro voted for independence in 2006, and in 2008, Kosovo declared its independence. Thus, all six republics that formed Yugoslavia in 1918 were again independent nations, and a new one, Kosovo, was born.